The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back after a couple weeks off from the podcast. I'm Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. This is another episode of the Hard Rock Empire for Saturday, May the 24th, 2025. And we are getting caught up after being off for a couple of weeks, but we've got a lot of great music and honestly, more great music this week than we have spots to put all this great music. It was a very loaded week music-wise, but we will bring you the best of what we have for this week. And this will be the first of two episodes. We'll be back again tomorrow night to talk the music of May the 2nd, but tonight it's the music of April the 25th on the Hard Rock Empire. And we've got a little ground to make up, but we'll be doing that over the next few weeks. We'll get everything caught up here on the podcast. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. It's good to be back. A lot of really good music for April 25th to get into. Had a really good time at Sonic Temple a couple weeks ago, so excited to talk about that. And just kind of glad to get back into the routine of things here.
Yeah, we've had a lot of stuff going on. Sonic Temple was kind of the first thing that kind of had us take a break, and then just some other stuff going on in the world of work and life and everything else, but we've got everything kind of rolling along. The news podcast will come back soon. We're kind of trying to figure out a time, or I'm kind of trying to figure out a time that makes sense for those, but we will get those back up and running in a couple of weeks. So stick around. We'll let you know when those are going to be back. Our daily news updates on all things nerdy will be back very soon, but getting back into the swing of things with the Hard Rock Empire. And tonight, rather than kind of go through news headlines, we'll save those for tomorrow. We do kind of want to talk a little bit about Sonic Temple. It was a couple of weeks ago in Columbus, Ohio. It is a 4-day rock festival. We talked a lot about it on our last episode in a preview format to kind of get an idea of some of the bands that were going to be playing. And I think those who are, in the know of, kind of maybe followed along on social media, kind of got an idea of some of the things that were going on at Sonic Temple. Obviously, a lot of great bands, a lot of great shows. Certainly, attendance was very strong, I think, over the 4 days. I think they'd be pretty happy about that. There were some challenges, as we say in the, we're trying to be delicate about some things that maybe didn't go well. There were challenges, opportunities for improvement, if you will. But overall, it seemed like, most people came away relatively pleased from the weekend. Mike, you went up for the weekend. I had planned on going up, but some of these challenges combined with a band cancellation on Sunday and my work schedule, which was the biggest challenge for me, kept me from being able to do that. But you got a chance to really kind of lock in on the Friday lineup, which when the schedule was released, definitely looked like the strongest of the 4 days, at least as far as the music that we typically listen to. So before we kind of dig into Friday specifically, just your overall impressions of the event, which has seemingly grown significantly since you were up there last for Rock on the Range.
Yeah, I mean, that was back in 2007, I believe, so it's definitely been a long time, and it's wild because, I've been up to, like, the fairgrounds at the Expo Center for, like, retro game conventions. To me, I can't recognize that that's the same place when I go up there for Sonic Temple. It feels like an entirely different area. It's really bizarre, and I think kind of its proximity to the highway kind of creates some issues as far as you're always going to have traffic problems. I think it's unavoidable. It seems like after Thursday they did their best to mitigate it, and honestly, my trip there Friday wasn't too bad. I had a Lyft take me there from my hotel. Pretty cheap on the way up there, not so cheap on the way back. And then I also had to kind of walk a farther distance to access the Lyft driver on the way back. But, if it kept them out of the traffic, I certainly can't complain. But yeah, the venue is amazing. I walked in. They had the Metallica pop-up store kind of like right as you walk in. So I got there early enough where I could get in line and get some Metallica merch pretty quickly. So many booths. I saw some people online kind of complain that they thought the ratio of what the booths offered was a little off, where they had too many kind of bar service booths as opposed to merchandise stands. Because that initially they basically had the one giant area for all the other band merch, and The one time I walked over there, the line there was so ridiculous. I was just like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I think over the course of the weekend, they did open up one or two more areas for band merch, but I still think there's an opportunity there to give people better access to that, especially when they're at individual stages where those bands are performing. I think that's still something where they can improve. But yeah, as far as the Friday experience, when the schedule came out, that was kind of what I keyed on right off the bat, because you had the main stage with Metallica, Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, Testament, Exodus, Overkill, pretty much all you could ask for as far as 80s thrash and speed metal with a legend like Alice Cooper and kind of his 90s and 2000s equivalent Rob Zombie in the mix. It was just a perfectly booked stage where maybe some of the other stages, they kind of mixed some things up where I wasn't. There were no other days or stages where I could just camp there and be like, this is all I need to see. Like, I don't need to go anywhere else. And I get it. You're limited with where you can book people and when they can be in town for it. But I think when you can start breaking these things down by kind of genre or likely fan interest, I think you're doing it right. And that Friday main stage was just tremendous.
One of the other things you mentioned to me, and obviously we'll kind of get into some of the overall challenges, things that they could improve, but it seemed like one of the big issues with the way any festival is, but specifically this one, because it's the one we're talking about, is that you didn't really want to give up your seat in the main stadium where the main stage was to go check out an outer stage for fear that you might not have that seat when you come back.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting situation too, because when I walked into the stadium, this was before Overkill started, so I got there a little early. I noticed as I was kind of walking down into the area of kind of general admission seating, there was like people sitting in one area, but then there were two sections that no one was sitting in. And I asked the usher there, what's the difference? Because neither were bleachers, they were seats. And the guy explained to me that a couple of the sections were reserved for like special tickets that actually have the seat number on them. Weirdly enough, there was an area that I ultimately sat in that were originally earmarked for that, but they decided to not make them reserved because I guess they weren't moving enough reserved seating. So I ended up getting a really great seat kind of in what should have been a reserve seat, but you had all those seats to the right of me that were reserved that people kept trying to sit in, and this one poor usher basically every minute had to check people's wristbands and tell them to move. It had to be awful for this guy, but it also makes some weird optics when you see some of the pictures of the performances where there's like this huge like gap in seating where it just looks like nobody wanted to buy a ticket and sit there, because chances are a lot of those people, and once Metallica came out, those seats were filled, but those people weren't sitting there for Overkill and Exodus. It wasn't happening.
Well, and they didn't have to. I mean, that's the one perk of buying that seat. And honestly, if the lineup in the future were such that we would go back, getting a seat like that makes a lot of sense, because it does allow you to just say, well, I'm going to be on the outer stages all day because, or I'm going to show up at 3:00 in the afternoon because I can come right in and get my seat and know where you're going to be. But, the other side to that too is a lot of those VIP tickets are pretty expensive. So we see it at major sporting events. I think the U.S. Open tennis tournament is one that's kind of known. The French Open also has had some issues with it, where you have these companies or very rich people that buy these seats very close, and then they just don't show up until maybe the finals or the last match of the evening or something. So these seats that are prime seats sit empty all day. And like you said, the optics on television or photos make it look like nobody's there, when in reality the place is still packed out. It's just this one section that doesn't have any people in it.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have the issue where a lot of those people that were ultimately trying to take up those seats had field passes too.
Yeah.
So like they had access to both the field and the seats. So you're telling them, hey, you can't sit in any of these seats, even though they think they bought a fairly premium ticket that gave them field admission. So it was really awkward. But yeah, once I found my seat, I got up once in that entire main stage slate on Friday, and that I was sitting next to like 4 or 5 dudes who, it was bad because I agreed to kind of help them save their seats a couple times, but at one point, pretty much all of them walked away at the same time, which is sketchy as all get out. Like, I can't tell a group of people, hey, I'm saving these seats for people I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Like, to me, you go with a group of people and you walk away in shifts.
Yeah.
Like you don't leave more than 1 or 2 seats empty at any point in time. So I walked away. It was in between two of the sets. I want to say maybe between Alice Cooper and Rob Zombie, but at that point in time on the video screens they were playing from the second stage, Suicidal Tendencies. So I got to hear like Institutionalized. I got to hear part of How Will I Laugh Tomorrow, which are both great songs. But yeah, I got up, grabbed something from the concession stand, went to the restroom real quick, sat back down, and that was all the movement I made once I plopped down prior to Overkill, just because I knew I had a good seat and I didn't want to risk coming back and having to stand way up beyond that and not get a good view of Metallica.
Yeah, and obviously, it all sounds like Metallica put on an amazing show. That was the first time you had seen them
Yeah.
live, and it sounds like they delivered as you would expect.
Yeah, I think people are always going to be a little critical sometimes of a band like Metallica because I think they have maybe even like bloated expectations even beyond what they could deliver. I think there were people that complained that there were too many breaks in between songs and, that they played an entire AC/DC song before they played Ecstasy of Gold before they came out. Like they were already kind of running late. So there was that like, okay, it's getting cold out here, guys. Let's get this thing moving, which was also a problem. Once the sun went down, it was pretty cool out there. But yeah, of the big four, Megadeth has always been my favorite of them. Metallica's been fairly close. I do love Metallica, but there is something about seeing them live. I think, they opened with Creeping Death, and like every song they played, you're just like, oh, it's that song, yes. Like it's just the excitement for hearing it was just tremendous, and it was kind of cool. Like when they would play, like they played King Nothing, and the crowd loved that. They played Fuel, and the crowd was into that. So you had these songs that are to me classics from albums that maybe don't get the same respect as a Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets. But man, the people were still super into it. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's great to see. And of course, they played again Sunday, which was when I was planning on coming up. But when you looked at the Sunday lineup, and obviously that lineup got worse when Alice in Chains had to unfortunately back out due to a health concern, and certainly wish them the best. But, when I look at, my schedule and thinking, well, if I'm going to come up for one day, it would be Sunday. And if I was only coming up there for Metallica, I mean, would I have regretted it? Probably not. It would have been an amazing show. But it was a lot of money to know that I have to turn around and get up early on Monday morning. And, you were going to be,
I had a job interview Monday morning.
You had a job interview Monday morning, which went really well, obviously, for you. But it was just a matter of knowing I wasn't going to get out of there till late, hearing the story of how your Friday went, and knowing Sunday was going to probably be the same because it was Metallica. I think as long as they run the historic Cruz Stadium, like you said, because of its location, because of the Ohio Fairgrounds, because of everything, they're kind of landlocked with the highway and just other buildings in the area. Like there's not a whole lot you can do you can make it better, which they clearly did, but you can't really make it great because it's just not a great location.
Well, and it seems like there's just perpetual construction up there too, which doesn't help either. I'm really curious. I would love to go check out festivals like Incarceration and Louder Than Life, just to kind of get a comparison of what the flow is going in and out of there. If it's a little less brutal. And both those festivals run by Danny Wimmer Promotions also tend to have pretty good lineups. So yeah, I would like to check out some other festivals to see if they're suffering the same way or if it's a little better there.
Yeah, for sure. And there was one festival coming up in Wisconsin that we were kind of looking at the lineup for, but unfortunately I'll be in Atlanta that weekend, so won't be able to.
Yeah, that's still. That's a tough call to fly up because I would probably only want to go for like a day, maybe.
Yeah.
To fly up to Madison just to catch some power metal bands and come back. I don't know.
Yeah.
It would be really cool. I did see Striker and Mega Colossus, two amazing bands are going to be there. So not totally saying I'm not going to go, but it's something to consider.
Sure, for sure. And you hope that some of the issues they had this year that they'll be able to figure out like as best they can for Sonic Temple going forward. And I think even more so than the parking, even more so than the construction, which they can't do anything about, or the high school graduations, they can't do anything about all that all happens up there. is the lineup. I think there is still an imbalance in the lineup. Like I said, if you couldn't go Friday, if you were fans of the kind of music we were fans of, the rest of the week was really not great. Um, People were super excited. It was a Beartooth that came in to
Yeah.
replace Alice.
Local band of Columbus that years ago performed there, I guess, and now they got to sit in on the main stage filling in for Alice in Chains. So really cool story for them. I'm
Yeah.
not super familiar with their work, but certainly happy for the guys.
And the people who online were super excited for
absolutely.
them. So I get that, that's always the challenge, that it's not always for us, but at
Yeah.
the same time, all these bands we talk about each and every week, like, you can't tell me that there's not the ability to dedicate one stage for the weekend to these power metal, AOR, melodic rock bands that, and again, a lot of the bands admittedly are foreign, and right now, international travel maybe not the cheapest thing to do, but there are a lot of those bands here in the U.S. that we spotlight as well that would make for a great, even if it's the fourth stage, just put them out there. Because if there had been 4 or 5 of those bands playing on Sunday and then Metallica, I probably would have driven up for Sunday.
Yeah, honestly, like, I don't expect to want to sit on the main stage all 4 days and see only bands I like. Like, that's unrealistic.
Yes.
But it would be great if I could go other days, and maybe the third stage is where I want to be. Maybe the fourth stage is where I want to be. And to some degree, they did kind of give you some decent options. You think like Saturday, the second stage, you had Bullet for My Valentine, Jimmy Eat World, which seems like a weird combination, but probably would have been a good show. You had let's see, where was who else did I notice that I was like, hey, I kind of want to see them, but then ultimately didn't. Oh no, they were main stage. But I mean, third stage on Sunday, you had Arch Enemy and Guar. That would have been pretty good combination. So it was out there, but nothing to the level of like Friday's main stage, where it was like every band is a band I've wanted to check off my list if I haven't already seen them.
And the other thing too that you can make the argument for is, like, why wasn't that lineup on Saturday? Why was the really good lineup for all those bands? Like, are all the fans of those bands retired? So they're going to be there
Possibly.
on Friday? Like, I know we're all getting up there in age, but
I mean, that could be a scheduling thing, because if you know ahead of time you're having Metallica play 2 nights, like, you're probably they're probably naming the 2 nights, and you're kind of adjusting things around them, and it probably looks more appetizing to play Friday and Sunday than it would to play Thursday and Saturday.
Sure, for sure. It just, maybe we could have moved the Friday lineup to Sunday, because again, I probably would have been more likely to drive up there if Friday's lineup had been Sunday's lineup. I would have certainly come up, but minor things. And again, as we talk about when we talk about anime conventions, scheduling is not easy.
No,
it's challenging to get this exactly right, and I think they do a better job than it's mostly good, some bad, but I think overall they get it right more than they get it wrong.
I think that was one of my takeaways after going Friday. Was my initial thought looking at the lineup was like, man, why can't Trivium also be on Friday? Why can't Bullet for My Valentine also be on Friday? And then when I experienced Friday, I'm like, I'm glad there weren't other bands I wanted to see on Friday, because my day was pretty much booked. Like, I didn't have to go anywhere, and I saw a tremendous concert. Like, it's not a matter of booking all my bands on the same day. That would be wasteful. But if we could maybe better align the ones that have similar fans, maybe, I think you could still kind of work things out a little better there. But all things considered, for the scope of this event, they did a great job.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think looking forward, maybe next year, I know you'd mentioned this, kind of getting to see what the lineup is going to be before you commit to buying a pass, unless you're going to just go all out and buy the super VIP passes and know that you're going to,
which could be wild,
have a dedicated seat, and know that because then you can basically the whole festival is yours at that point.
And I assume those might also come with access to, there's like a VIP lounge kind of area too, so that might also be a part of that package. I'd have to look into it further, because that would be cool, because I mean, you could basically get out of the elements to some degree, get out of the sun, still come back to a seat. That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, something to keep in mind as future events. And obviously other festivals, as you mentioned, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on those lineups and potentially heading out to some of those as well. But that was Sonic Temple, and again, another really big event, and certainly congrats to them for another, I would say 95% of it was a successful weekend, and the 5% they certainly have done what they can to try to mitigate any of those challenges. But That's going to wrap up our news segment for tonight. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can check out our previous podcast there. You can also go to our store. We've still got merch on our store. A reminder, we'll be back again tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, getting 2 on this holiday weekend. It'll be the music of May the 2nd. Maybe not quite the depth of music for May the 2nd as we had on April the 25th, but still some really good stuff. So we'll bring that to you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. On the Nerdcast Empire's Hard Rock Empire, of course, live on Twitch, live on YouTube. Please feel free to drop us a follow, a subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing. Continuing to work on our follower goals. You see them on the screen right now. We'd love to get across the 50 mark on both YouTube and Twitch. Twitch especially because it allows us to monetize and do some cool things and be able to kind of expand what we're looking to do. So we certainly appreciate that. Spread the word. Share our posts on social media. We would really appreciate it. It's time to get to the new music, and that means I need to remember what I'm doing here because it's been a while since we've done this. But the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paste a playlist into the chat on YouTube and on Twitch, if I can spell the word playlist. But basically, in this situation, we have the playlist for April the 25th. This is a list that Mike compiles each and every week. He goes through, and he will pull one new track off of new albums for a given date. He puts the list together of all the new albums based on a couple different sources. And then once we get to that, then we watch the playlist and we pick 2 new albums to spotlight on the podcast. And I feel like this is another one of those weeks that maybe it's worth mentioning a couple of other albums that didn't get picked, because I know I saw Ghost on the list this week. Specifically them, their new album came out, and what I've heard of it has been really good. I don't think that's any surprise to you. I would assume you would agree.
Yeah, what I've heard of it so far is solid. I mean, it's Ghost. It's going to be catchy as all get out, and it delivers on that front. Harem Scarum had a new one, which was good as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what else did I listen to? It's been a while when I started doing my research for this. The Beholder album in the Temple of the Tyrant. I thought that was solid as well. Blister Brigade with a rioting new breed. I enjoyed that as well. The hard rock band from Sweden. Yeah, and still more that I could call out or that I still need to listen to further. But there was almost too much good music.
Yeah,
this week.
that especially stood out when we went through the music of May the 2nd. But I told you, I there were 2 things I picked pretty quickly, but there were probably 4 more that I could have picked and felt just fine about picking them, and then another at least half dozen that on any other given week would have been a good, solid pick. So please check out the playlist. It's just really, really loaded this week. I think you'll find something you really like on there in addition to the stuff we're going to talk about. Couple other reminders. I did post the link to the Discord. Join our Discord. That's where you can find out when we're streaming. You can kind of keep an update on all the stuff we're doing. We've got lots of great channels in there. Please join the Discord. A lot of cool stuff in there. And one final thing before we get to the music, just a reminder, if you're listening on the podcast versions, our podcast version's going through a little bit of a shift at the moment as we're moving away from Spreaker and onto, I can't remember what the new platform is, but if
Spreaker 2,
yeah.
Revenge.
If you listen on Apple or Spotify, you won't notice probably any difference other than the episodes might take a little longer to get up right now because I'm having to send them in. I don't have the access to just drop them on there myself. I will eventually, but if you're on Twitch or YouTube watching our video version, you're not going to notice any difference. But a reminder that on the podcast version, you will not hear the music clips that we play. So always good to join us live. That's the one way you can be certain. So it's time to get to the picks. I got crossed up and switched Mike's picks around on the list. So we've got his second pick first and his first pick second. But either way, 2 really good picks this week in a week that was just absolutely full of outstanding music. So get us started with what actually is your second pick of the week.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Looking at my 2 picks this week, I stayed in Italy for both of them and also the same record label. So
that's kind of wild.
When I go to actually purchase these albums, the physical versions, that'll make it really easy because I'll be buying it from the same place. But yeah, so this pick, it is the 6th full-length studio album from a thrash metal band. The band is called Game Over, and the album is Face the End.
It's funny you mentioned that because my 2 picks are also from the same company or from the same country and have toured together. So there's just one of those weeks where it's just a lot of symmetry between these bands.
There are some hotbeds of good music, and we've seen it in Sweden, we've seen it in Italy. Like They're out there.
There is, and this is a really good band. I'm excited to get to listen to the rest of this album. It's been good so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So this band formed in 2008. According to the Metal Archives, it consists of Alessandro Sansone on guitars, Luca Zeroni on guitars and backing vocals, Anthony D'Antone on drums, Leonardo Molinari on bass and vocals, and Danny Sciavina on vocals. Any band that's just doing straight up thrash metal is going to catch my attention, and that's definitely what these guys are doing. It's funny, when I first heard them, I thought this is the kind of band that I would want to see touring with some of the bands that I saw at Sonic Temple. And as I kind of saw their website and started reading some of their bio, it mentions these guys so far have toured across Europe, the United States, Japan, and China, supporting acts such as Megadeth, Exodus, Testament, Overkill, Nuclear Assault, Destruction, Sodom, Tankard, and more. So they're already out there doing that, much to my lack of knowledge. So that's fantastic. The website also describes their live shows as being energetic, pumps adrenaline in your veins with massive riffs that pierce your ears, combined with sing-along choruses. What more could you ask for out of a thrash metal band? I mean, these guys just nail it from front to back on this album. Both of my bands this week, I'm also really excited because when I went to look them up on YouTube to pull them for the playlist, they both have really cool music videos kind of supporting the songs on their albums, and I always love when bands do that, and these guys, their video for the song Lust for Blood, really cool. Standout tracks on the album include Neck Breaking Dance, Lost in Disgrace, Veil of Insanity, Crimson Waves, and the track that I picked to listen to, the track Lust for Blood.
Let's check these guys out. This is Game Over with their new release, Face the End. This is the second track off of this album, Lust for Blood. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Get such an Anthrax vibe off of that track, that particular clip. I mean, obviously I'm sure there's a lot of those bands that influence these guys, but that very much felt like he could have been right alongside Anthrax and the same energy, the same kind of vibe to their music.
Yeah, I think kind of that sing-along-y, like shouting chorus kind of gives it that feel. But yeah, again, more bands need to be in the spotlight that make this kind of music.
Yeah, and it's great to see that there are bands still out there doing it and doing it well. And again,
I think the vocals do have a little bit of clutch to them too. Like, Chris mentioned that. I could hear that as well.
Yeah, I definitely get that vibe as well. But again, as we talk about so often with these bands that are doing an older style of music, they find a way to do it without making it feel old. Like it is a modern feel for a throwback style. And
I think part of that is on us because I think we're so quick to just ascribe the label of old to something that sounds like something that's happened before, when it's like, it's just a style of music.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be new or old. It's just that's what they're going for. I think we're so quick to dismiss anything that maybe sounds like something we've heard in the past because that's just how the music industry works, where it's like, well, we're done with that. Things can't sound like that anymore. Now they have to sound like something else. And I think we do music a disservice by having that mentality.
Well, and I think part of it is because people don't realize there are bands still out there doing new music that sounds like this, because they think that all the music that sounds like this was made in 1985.
Yeah.
Like, that's not true. Like, we know from doing this podcast, we know there are bands out there doing this and doing it really well, and this is really good. I'm excited, like I said, to get to listen to the rest of the album.
And I kind of mentioned it off the air the other day. I've been watching more and more YouTube videos from people like Ben Eller, who is, I think, like our age, maybe a little younger than me. But, here's a guy that's just a tremendous guitarist on YouTube that the way he kind of reveres that 80s rock and metal, like, the guy celebrates it. And I think more and more musicians kind of have that mindset, whereas there was a good chunk of time where you weren't supposed to, like, you weren't supposed to enjoy Rat, like that. You weren't allowed to do that. And I think we've come full circle now, where you look at some of the guitar work of a Warren DeMartini or a Jake E. Lee, and you're like, these guys were amazing. And I think that also extends to a lot of the 80s thrash that wasn't the big four. Like, there were a lot of really good bands beyond that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to see those bands influencing the new generation of rock and metal. It's what makes doing this podcast so much fun because we get a chance to discover all these bands out there doing really cool things. So,
Yeah.
check these guys out. I really enjoyed that album. Thought it was really good. I think I definitely want to get a chance to finish the album up. But Game Over. Check out their new release this week, Mike's second pick of the week. But we're going to back up a step and get to Mike's first pick again. Another really great band, another really great sounding album. Tell us a little bit about pick number 1, if you will.
Yeah, so this is another band that's been around a while. This is their 8th studio album. They are from Italy. They are a power metal band. They are Trick or Treat, and their newest album is Ghosted.
You know, I know you have all the stats, and we won't talk about them today. We'll save that for another time. But I do wonder, like, in addition to the country stats, like, what percentage of Italian bands that we've picked have also been power metal or melodic metal bands? Because it feels like maybe, I don't know if it's half, but it feels like there's a pretty good chunk of those bands, but they're also good.
Yeah, I think Italy's definitely a hotbed of power metal, symphonic metal. Like, they have a kind of a style more often than not, and I'm not complaining.
No.
So this band's made up of Alessandro Conti on vocals, Guido Benedetti on guitars, Luca Venturelli on guitar, Leone Viani Conti on bass, and Luca Setti on drums. They started in 2002, and you think of the name Trick or Treat, you think that may be kind of a fairly generic name until you realize why they're called Trick or Treat. They actually got their start as a Halloween tribute band.
That makes a ton of sense,
So
honestly.
there you go. In 2005, they recorded a demo of original material titled "Like Donald Duck." I don't know where to go with that, but which ultimately led to a record deal. In 2008, for their second album, 10 Soldiers, they're actually able to get Michael Kiske to guest on a couple tracks, which for a former Halloween tribute band had to be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
In 2010 and 2011, they actually got to open for Halloween during their Seven Sinners World Tour along with Stradivarius.
Jeez.
Yeah, and you go through their discography, and the cool guest appearances don't stop either, because you have 2012, their third album, Rabbit's Hill Part 1. The late Andre Matos, formerly from Angra, contributed to a track. In 2016, they released Rabbit's Hill Part 2, which is funny because that just almost sounds like a Halloween album title, too. Like, it just, you feel like they have maybe a similar mentality or sense of humor with their music. But that album had guest appearances from Tim Ripper Owens and Tony Kakko. So
Wow.
they're definitely connected, which is awesome. Another interesting tidbit about these guys, between 2019 and 2020, they released 12 songs inspired by the legendary manga series Saint Seiya, with each song representing each sign of the zodiac, which would ultimately be combined as the album The Legend of the 12 Saints.
Makes sense.
I've not listened to that yet, but I definitely want to. Much like with Game Over, a couple of videos for this album from songs like Ghosted and Dance with the Dancing Clown, really cool and always encouraging to hear bands or see bands still do the music video thing in a time where maybe you don't need to. Standout tracks on this album include Craven Road, Dance with the Dancing Clown, Polybius, Make a Difference, and the song that I picked to listen to, the title track, Ghosted.
Let's check these guys out. It's Trick or Treat with their new album, Ghosted. This is, as Mike said, the title track to this album, Ghosted, track number 4. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Searching for your voice, the one I used to know. I feel like a ghost, where did I go? I've been ghosted, hidden by a wall of liars, and your desire is locking a cage where I fall like a monster. I'm screaming in the darkness and hear my sadness while waiting like a damn soul. I've been ghosted. Now I'm a ghost.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good. You know, the one thing you mentioned them starting as a Halloween tribute band, obviously you hear the influence there, but you definitely don't hear a band that's trying to sound like Halloween.
No, I don't know what their earlier material sounded like. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but it's clear by this stage of their career, and probably way earlier, they've found an identity. That, I mean, maybe a little less heavy than your typical Halloween, really melodic, just almost bordering on AOR at times. But yeah, I really excited to have found this, and I definitely want to check into more of their catalog.
Yeah, for sure. I want to, like I said, want to finish this album here, but you're right. I mean, some of the back stuff, especially the early stuff, just to kind of see where they've come from. But
Yeah.
uh, just another great band out of Italy. I guess we even shouldn't be surprised at this point. They just keep churning them out. But
Yeah, absolutely.
this album, really good stuff. Definitely check these guys out. Trick or Treat with their album Ghosted, Mike's second/first pick of the week. I have 2 picks as well, and Mike stayed in the country of Italy, and as I teased earlier, I have stayed in the same country as well. We are headed to Sweden for my 2 picks this week, and the first pick is a melodic rock AOR band from Gothenburg, Sweden. Founded in 2014, it is Art Nation with The Ascendants, and this is a band that, I mentioned we're going to talk about the fact that they have open for my second pick this week. These guys, founded in 2014, as I mentioned, founded by Alexander Strandell and Christopher Borg, I should say. Strandell's on vocals, Borg is on guitar, and Richard Svard on bass. Borg and Svard actually left the band for a short time, returned in 2022 for the band's 2023 album Inception. This is their 5th studio album overall. It's interesting that, like I said, the one reviewer mentioned they were able to catch these guys opening for my second pick today, which is H.E.A.T, at a show in London. That same reviewer compared these guys to Sonata Arctica in Europe. That's kind of a wide range there. I was a little confused maybe by that, but you get the vibe of what I think they were going for with that comparison. It's just a great melodic rock album, one of the stronger ones I think we've seen this year. And on that sliding scale of AOR melodic rock, this band definitely more on the harder side of that scale, whereas my second pick is a little more on the melodic side. But overall, front to back, just a really good album. Standout tracks include Set Me Free, Julia, Halo, and the album or the song we're going to listen to on the podcast, which is Thunderball. So let's check these guys out now. This is Art Nation with their new album, The Ascendants. This is the second track off of this album, Thunderball. So let's listen to a little bit of that now.
So now I hit you like a thunderball. I make sure you do the feeling up. Even if it's right, I can still paradise. So now I hit you like a thunderball. Don't you think that I'm unbelievable? You promised me the words of life will fade in your eyes. So I hit you like a thunderball.
Yeah, just, really enjoyable album, an easy listen, as you would expect from these type of melodic hard rock bands, and really excited to get to check more of these guys' stuff out now that I've had a chance to listen to this album, but it was really, really good. Mike, your thoughts on Art Nation?
Definitely had some Stradivarius vibes there. I could definitely hear it. I was thinking when you mentioned them being from Gothenburg, like I always equate that to like melodic death metal, the home of that sound. So I was kind of curious what other acts actually originated from Gothenburg. And yeah, obviously you got your bands like At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity, In Flames. Like not surprising, those are kind of the mellow death pioneers. But you also have acts like Ace of Base. Who knew? Amaranth. You have Avatar. The one that also kind of stuck out to me here, Crazy Frog, actually originated from Gothenburg, which is kind of weird. But yeah, so they definitely, Hammerfall's another one. They have a wider arrangement of sounds that are popular there. But yeah, I definitely like these guys and would be interested in hearing more of it.
Yeah, maybe that's a city that need to visit at some point. Clearly, there's something there that's causing all these great music acts to come out of this city. But really great stuff. Really enjoyed
and Crazy
this.
Frog for whatever reason.
And Crazy Frog. But
takes you back to the days of like downloading ringtones or something.
For sure. Oh man, those are the good old days. But Art Nation, definitely check those guys out. Really, really good stuff from them. My first pick for this week. I've already mentioned who my second pick is. We'll talk a little bit about their album as well. These are the guys that were headlining the concert that the reviewer in the last example was going to see. This is a hard rock band from the Uplands, Vasby, Sweden. This is H.E.A.T with Welcome to the Future. These guys founded in 2007. It looked like on Wikipedia it was their 8th studio album. The YouTube music page said it was their 7th studio album. So I'm not sure how they're counting it a little bit different. But either way, they've done this a lot. The band is Jimmy J on bass and backing vocals, Jonah T on keyboards and backing vocals, Don Crash on drums and backing vocals, Dave DeLone on guitars and backing vocals, and Kenny Leckremo on lead vocals and acoustic guitar. These guys got to start immediately opening for Toto back in 2007, went on to open for Sabaton and Alice Cooper. They've also toured with Ed Guy, so you kind of see the kind of music they line up with. Eric Gronwall actually was the lead singer of this band from 2010 to 2020, left to join Skid Row in 2022, and of course he was with them until 2024 when he had to step aside to deal with his ongoing battle with leukemia. Leckremo was the original vocalist in the band, left when Gronwall came in, but now has returned to the band, and this is, I believe, the second album since he's come back, and certainly still sounds as good as ever, so that's what worked out really well for them. Like I said, these guys a little bit more toward the melodic end of the spectrum, but it's just a really great album, another really strong AOR release on this week's list, and there were many more, as Mike mentioned, more that we didn't pick, but these guys are really, really good, and this album is really, really good. Standout tracks include Bad Time for Love, Running to You, Call My Name, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is the opening track, Disaster. So let's check these guys out. This is H.E.A.T, the new album, Welcome to the Future. The opening track is Disaster. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Definitely put some melodic and melodic rock, but man, it's just, sometimes it's just, you get an album like this and it's just so enjoyable to listen to. The tracks are just very easy to get through, and not everything has to be like at the hard end of the spectrum. I think these two bands that I picked were definitely different enough that you have a little variety, but also similar enough that you could see why they would tour together. But really, really good album from these guys who've been good for a long time. Mike, your thoughts on H.E.A.T?
It's kind of funny, and I think it kind of goes to show you the issues with finding new music really in the last 15, 20 years. It's like when you look at this band and think, their first album came out in 2008, was it just the unluck of an algorithm on Pandora or iHeartMusic or Spotify where I didn't discover this band as opposed to some of the other bands that I did run into? Because there's no doubt, had I heard something from these guys sooner, I would have been into them. I just wonder if it's just, I just didn't run into them. It's just bad luck.
And it's wild because they were touring with bands that you did listen to. So it's like you would think that somehow that would have got pulled into the algorithms. Oh, well, we're touring with Ed Guy, so if you listen to Ed Guy, you would want to listen to H.E.A.T as well. So you just don't know how some of those things work out. But great that we found them now. And again, this album really, really catchy.
I also wonder too, when you list some of the track names off this album, how many of those track names have variants from other bands that are also kind of AOR bands, because they sound like similar topics that you would expect an AOR band to sing about. So you just wonder how much overlap there is out there if you did a search.
I'm sure there's a ton of songs called Running to You or, Call My Name. Yeah, that's
not that that's a bad thing.
No.
I mean, I'm all for more of them, but it just seems like if you're asking ChatGPT to come up with AOR song titles, that's one of them it gives you.
For sure. Maybe that's another challenge for ChatGPT someday to create 3 real AOR song titles and 1 fake one and see if we can pick them out. But no, really enjoyed these guys. Great stuff from them. Definitely check this album out. H.E.A.T, my second pick for this week. It is time to get to the vault, where Mike and I will each give you a classic album you need to check out. Mike is rolling through his vault once again, letter by letter through the alphabet, And we are up to the letter K for tonight's episode. And again, I'm sure lots of good choices in the letter K, but what do you have for us for this week?
Yeah, it turns out the letter K is pretty largely dominated in my catalog by King Diamond, who I did pick the first time around. So I wanted to maybe avoid that. There may also be like Catatonia had a couple albums that I could have went with as well. The one I did go with, I believe we've talked about these guys before because they're still out there doing it, and they are a Frontiers band. I was aware of Frontiers Records when I discovered these guys, but I wasn't nearly as hyper focused on them as I am in 2024 and 2025 now. But this is the fifth album from the Italian power metal band Khymera, and the album is titled Master of Illusions.
Yeah, we'll see if they come up again in a few weeks when I get up to the letter K for my Frontiers bands pick.
It's certainly possible.
But really, these guys are really good, obviously.
Yeah, so these guys actually kind of formed back in 2002 when a meeting happened between the Italian producer and musician Daniele Liverani and Kansas keyboardist Steve Walsh occurred.
All right.
Turns out, like, they didn't really stick around, I don't think, all that long, because by the time you get to this point, they're kind of a brand new band. The only kind of holdover at that in the lineup at this point is Pink Cream 69 and Unisonic's bassist and the lead singer of this band, Dennis Ward. He's always kind of been a backing vocalist in his bands, but turns out the dude has an amazing voice, and in Khymera, he definitely shines and is definitely one of the standout elements to their sound. It's otherwise pretty much everything you'd expect from a Frontiers release before I really kept my eye on every Frontiers release. I think this was a band that I just kind of ended up getting algorithmed into, where I was listening to Pandora, probably like an Ed Guy or Sonata Arctica station, and they just threw this at me. Maybe Angra or any number of the other bands in that similar vein that they might have thrown them at me because of that. But yeah, it's everything you'd expect from their band, from a Frontiers act. The website compares their musicianship and songwriting to bands like Jafria, Icon, and Signal, which, again, if there was a mission statement for Frontiers, that's kind of where you think it would go. Not a whole lot else on this band. Standout tracks on the album, though, do include Walk Away, Master of Illusions, The Sun Goes Down, The Rhythm of My Life, After All This Time, and Just Let It Happen.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it's one of those, a lot of these Frontiers bands that we find, and I'm finding this as we go through week by week, like, there's not always a ton of information out there about them because, in a lot of cases they're foreign bands or whatever. But when you go through their albums, they're just all really solid. Like they don't release bad music, and Khymera no different. Like another band that's just really, really good. And I'm sure, like you said, one of those Pandora channels back in the day spit these guys out at you, and they were the beneficiary of the algorithm that didn't catch heat, so it's just one of those things. But
luck of the draw, apparently.
Or maybe the label was just finding a different way to do it. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, again, just a really talented band that, like you said, is still out there doing it, which is great to see. So certainly we'll probably talk about them again somewhere down the line, potentially in the vault, maybe in a few weeks.
Certainly possible.
But yeah, definitely check out Khymera, obviously. The reason I mentioned that, of course, if you maybe haven't been listening for a few weeks, my picks in the vault are Frontiers bands. We're going through basically two letters, or one letter for 2 weeks. I pick a band 1 week, and then I let a randomizer pick a band the next week. We are on to the randomizer letter D. So we are up to a band that unfortunately is no longer around, which unfortunately has been kind of a theme of some of these randomizer picks. This is a band called De La Cruz from Australia. They are a Frontiers band that released the album Street Level many years ago. These guys really talented, formed in the mid 2011, which is a weird way of writing that on Wikipedia. Australian guitarist and Kramer Guitars endorsee Casey Jones and Auckland, New Zealand vocalist Roxy Catalano. They were joined by Melbourne bass drummer Lacey Lane, Brisbane guitarist Rory Joy, and local bass player Dennis Jaculi. They only released 2 releases. They had an EP in 2011, De La Cruz, and then came back with this album in 2013. And when you see the album art, which obviously if you're watching on YouTube or on Twitch, you can see the album art, you kind of get an idea of what this album is going to sound like. It definitely has a little bit of sleaze to it. Definitely has that vibe that you get from bands of that ilk. Your Motley Cruz, your Poison. Definitely, I'm sure influenced these guys to some degree, and you can hear it in this album. But it's a really good album, and again, you just wonder sometimes why these bands kind of appear and then disappear. According to their Wikipedia page, they, not long after the album came out, their lead guitarist said he would be leaving, said he was disillusioned with the music industry. And then, there was kind of some work within the band to try to keep it together. And then finally they just, in October, decided another member was going to leave. And then they just early the next year decided they were splitting up. And the Wikipedia lists that their Facebook page is still active, but in my efforts to find it, I could not. So I have a feeling that maybe that is not updated information, and indeed, their Facebook page has finally disappeared. So I'm not really sure what these guys are doing now, but I hope they're still the ones that still want to be in the business or in the business, because again, this is a really good album, and if you like those type of bands that I mentioned earlier, I think you'll dig these guys. But standout tracks include Street Level, Turn It Up, Cherry Bomb, and Worlds Collide. Just another kind of one of those one-off Frontiers releases that unfortunately never got the chance to really, release 4 or 5 albums, kind of develop that sound and kind of see where they would have gone. But if you're just looking for an album to check out, and again, very much in the vein of some of the sleaze rock of the early 90s, I think you could do a lot worse than checking out De La Cruz from Australia.
My first thought when I saw the band name is like, is this some sort of mid-90s like dance music that was on the radio like in 1995? Yeah, I can only imagine how easy it would be to get disenfranchised and disillusioned with the music industry and the business. I only wonder maybe if, fast forward to 2025, if maybe there's at least a more clear path to kind of operating it as a business where it's maybe a little less awful as it might have been years ago. I don't know, but I also think, when you're talking Frontiers bands, there's probably a huge saturation of kind of that sound going on in Europe, and it's probably kind of difficult to stand out.
It is. I think that's 100% the case, and it does make you wonder, and we'll probably never know like how some of these Frontiers deals are set up, because you just wonder, like, do they sign these bands and then say, hey, you got to sell X number of releases, and if you don't, we're not going to give you a second album?
Yeah.
Or is it, or do they, because you'd have to think, because some of these are kind of experimental when they put them together. Obviously the ones where you have like these big name people, that they've got leeway to do whatever. But like in this case, clearly a smaller band, not really any like well-known people in it. Like I assume there's kind of a limited leash on that. But yeah, I mean, again, the one thing I like about this journey through the vault is finding more really cool Frontiers bands, even if they did only release one album, which is kind of sad. But on to the letter E, starting tomorrow night. Some really good bands, the letter E in Frontiers. So really looking forward to, I've already got the picks. The pick for tomorrow will just tease the fact that they have released an album since we've been doing this podcast, and I did pick that album, I believe. But we're going to talk about their first album, which was a Frontiers release, and we'll do that starting tomorrow night. So that'll give you something to look forward to there. So those are the Vault picks. Time to get to the Power Trio, your hard rock hat trick each and every week, where we pick a question and then we get lots of input. It looks like Chris is giving us lots of input, which is great. I appreciate that. Also got some guest input, which is very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And, of course, you can give us your guest input. Join the Discord. Jump into our general channel. Let us know who your 3 are, or what your 3 songs are. We want to know. And we'll share the best ones on the podcast. So please let us know what your Power Trio choices are. And we did have a repeat with one of the ones I picked, so I will pick another one while we're kind of going through these. But while we do that, Mike, maybe go through what Chris has on the chat here, especially for those who are on YouTube who maybe can't see the chat except very small into the corner of your screen. But go through. He's looks like one of Chris's buddies, Jordan, has jumped in and given us some picks as well as Chris's picks.
Yeah, so starting with the guest picks from Chris via his buddy Jordan, we have number 1, All the Smoke by Tyler Yahweh, Gunna, and Wiz Khalifa. Beer for My Horses by Toby Keith and Willie Nelson, and Ronald by Falling in Reverse, Tech 9, and Alex Terrible. Not super familiar with any of those. I vaguely have heard of Beer for My Horses, but obviously not my thing. But that's kind of the joy of this experiment, is that people's picks are obviously not going to be my picks because we're different people. So definitely cool to kind of see maybe stuff coming out of a different realm than what we typically cover.
I mean, again, that's why we're really looking forward to people joining the Discord and answering these questions as well, because we want to know the people that listen to the podcast. It'd really be interesting if there were bands who we spotlight, who jump in and check out the podcast, who join our Discord, who would tell us who their favorite 3 of something is. That would be really cool to spotlight these bands' picks. But appreciate Jordan giving us some guest picks.
Absolutely.
What did Chris have for us before we get to what you've got for us?
Yeah, so for Chris's picks proper, we are looking at number 1, Easy Lover by Philip Bailey with Phil Collins. Not surprising whatsoever.
I stayed away from that one because I
classic.
knew that Chris was going to pick that one.
Number 2, we got Stop Dragging My Heart Around by Stevie Nicks with Tom Petty. Tom Petty is a legend.
He is, and that was a repeat. I had that one originally on my list, but I have made a swap to take that off my list so we don't have any repeats.
Number 3, we are looking at Passenger by Deftones with Maynard James Keenan.
Which Chris threatened that he was going to
I mean, you're going to have some Tool influence. That's also not too surprising, but not a bad pick by any means.
No, not at all. Those are really, really solid picks for sure. And
I would mention the honorable mentions, but I feel like that's kind of cheating and would infringe on my guest picks. So, you know.
Well, we'll hold off on that for now.
Yeah.
If there's any of those that don't get picked, we can come back and talk about those at
Absolutely.
the end. But as always, you also get some picks from your buddy Shane. Shout out to Shane, as always, for chipping in on this segment. So what did Shane have for us this week?
Yeah, I will say, even though I'm only really familiar with one of his picks, the guests that he has on his picks, really pretty impressive, and one of them is kind of a cool story, too. For pick number 1, we were looking at Five Finger Death Punch with the song Lift Me Up, featuring the metal god himself, Rob Halford.
Absolutely.
From their 2013 album, The Wrong Side of Heaven and The Righteous Side of Hell, Volume 1. Not familiar with the song, really, but if you can get Rob Halford on board, that's probably not a bad thing. Number 2, we were looking at, and this one's almost kind of cheating, it's Killswitch Engage with the song Signal Fire featuring Howard Jones. That's weird because Howard Jones was the former lead singer of Killswitch Engage. The original lead singer, Jesse Leach, was with the band from 1999 to 2002. He left due to what sounds like just a battle with depression. They brought in Howard Jones, who stuck around till, what year did he leave? He came back. Leach came back in 2012, I guess. But Howard Jones left, oddly enough, because he was having issues with kind of the touring lifestyle and the toll it was taking on his diabetes. So kind of an interesting, like, from what I always gathered just from vaguely paying attention, it never seemed like there was ill will toward any of these people. But yeah, kind of cool to see that in their 2019 album Atonement, you had both Jesse Leach and Howard Jones sharing vocal duties on the song Signal Fire.
2 things. Number 1, not the Howard Jones who did pop music in the 80s, who was
That would
great.
be kind of wild, too, actually. I would love to hear him in, like, a metalcore band.
Because that would have been a really cool crossover. Number 2, similar to one that I didn't pick because there was some debate online as to whether it really counted as a guest vocal. But the band Steely Dan brought in well, I guess you could call it a guest lead singer on the song Dirty Work, which is obviously one of their big hits. David Palmer came in to sing because he could sing the higher register stuff better than Donald Fagen. But they made him a member of the band full time for at least a short period, kind of while that song came out, and he did some backing vocals on a couple of the other tracks, and then he left the band because Fagen kind of took over and asserted his dominance as the lead singer. So, like, he wasn't he was kind of made a full-time member, but wasn't around long enough. So it's kind of a similar situation where it's like he was a member, but he also was kind of a guest vocalist on the song. So I did not pick that for that reason.
And it's not like we have any hard and fast rules to this segment. It's really just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But excuse me. So for pick number 3, this is actually the duplicate that Chris has in his honorable mentions. We were talking about Tenacious D with the song Kickapoo featuring Meatloaf and Ronnie James Dio.
Okay.
Which I am familiar with. Great song. I mean, I went back and watched the video to it before the show, and it's just kind of depressing to think that we no longer have Meatloaf or Ronnie James Dio. These guys are just both so talented.
Yeah.
And the music video is hilarious because you have Meatloaf playing like a young Jack Black's father who's like telling him not to listen to metal because it's like the devil's music. And then you have Dio who comes to life out of a poster in his room that tells him to go to Hollywood and create the greatest band ever. You know, it's from also like their second album, which was the soundtrack to the film Pick a Destiny. Just classic stuff, and you know, I kind of missed those days of Tenacious D compared to kind of where we are now.
Yeah, it's again just kind of classic, and certainly the movie kind of lined up with that vibe as well. So yeah, really good picks for Shane. But now it's time to get to our picks. So what do you have for your three?
And a quick shout out to the honorable mentions that weren't duplicates from Chris. Under Pressure, Queen, David Bowie.
Yeah,
obviously great song.
Yeah.
Bring the Noise, Anthrax and Public Enemy, not the Limp Bizkit version. We're not gonna do that
for sure.
So yeah, moving on to my picks. This one was actually kind of easy for me to come up with. I think the next power trio I'm struggling with a bit more, but this one kind of came pretty fast. Pick number one, kind of fresh in my mind because I just saw them live. Metallica, The Memory Remains with Marianne Faithfull off their 1997 album Reload.
So we have a duplicate artist, but not a duplicate song. So
interesting.
We will get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, so you obviously picked the Metallica song with Ja Rule from sometime in the early 2000s, if I had to guess. You know, when I criticize recent Metallica for their last couple albums feeling really samey, it's kind of songs like this where I'm like, I want to hear them do something like this again. Like, it doesn't have to be hard rock like Load and Reload, but do something a little out of the box. And I feel like Memory Remains was that. Number two, we have Megadeth with Attila Moon, Set Me Free, featuring Christina Scabia from their 2007 album United Abominations. She being the lead singer of the band Lacuna Coil. Just a really cool re-recording of a classic song from Euthanasia. Can't go wrong with that.
That is one that I certainly crossed my mind when I started thinking of these, but was almost certain that you would pick it, so I left that one on the table as well.
It's on my iPod, and whenever I tell my iPod to shuffle songs, it always starts with the first song alphabetically. I don't know why, so it always starts with that song. I don't know what's up with that, but that's just
maybe that makes it an earworm. I don't know. That'll be our pick for tomorrow.
Because man, the second I hit, and I'm just like, God, I don't really want to hear this again. Like, I don't remember. No, stop it. I don't remember either. And number three, this is kind of not a duplicate, but we have a duplicate guest appearer. I am talking about the song The Chase from Queensryche featuring Ronnie James Dio from the 2006 album Operation Mindcrime 2. First Mindcrime to me might be one of the best concept albums of all time. Mindcrime 2, I think they did a really good job of trying to recapture that sound, and I think where Mindcrime 1 is an amazing album and amazing songs that happens to tell a story, Mindcrime 2 is a good story that happens to have some pretty good songs on it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't reach Mindcrime 1's level, but that's asking a lot. Including Ronnie James Dio as a guest vocalist playing the character Dr. X is just a really cool added feature, and that song's really awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was one that when I was just looking at lists of these types of songs, that one came up a lot, and certainly is a worthy pick for the power trio. My three are, like I said, a little different. The one repeat that we had was easy to kind of swap out because there were two songs involving Stevie Nicks that kind of fall into this category. One is Stop Dragging My Heart Around that Chris mentioned. So I went with the other, which is Leather and Lace with Don Henley and Stevie Nicks. Just some really great harmony between those two in that song. A little bit slower, obviously, but just it's a really quality song. Metallica comes up again, but this one's going to be this is where we're stretching the rules a little bit, but I think this still qualifies.
That's fair, I think.
No Leaf Clover, Metallica and the San Francisco Symphony, because technically they've not released any other version of that song.
That's a great song.
That's a great song that I really wish there had been a traditional studio version of, but that's immediately I thought of, well, here's with the orchestra, and they're technically the guest artist on this. So
I think that's another reason why an album like Saint Anger was so disappointing, was because kind of prior to that, like the last real original material you got, I mean, you had I Disappear, but you had No Leaf Clover minus Human with the orchestra. Like you kind of just wanted them to sound like that minus the orchestra on future releases, and we ended up getting Saint Anger.
I just don't know why they did that. And the last pick, one of our all-time favorites from the 70s, the song All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople with guest vocals and, of course, the man who wrote the song, David Bowie, involved in that as well. And of course, Bowie wrote the song. If you don't know the story, and I think we've talked about it on the podcast, he was buddies with these guys, and he had written them Suffragette City to do, and they didn't really want it. So he wrote them All the Young Dudes instead, and that ended up being their mega hit. And it probably worked out for the best. Bowie got a big hit with Suffragette City. And then obviously
I prefer All the Young Dudes as far as songs
it's
go.
a better song for
Yeah.
sure. And Bowie ended up releasing his own versions of the songs, but obviously when you hear, if you've heard that song and maybe didn't realize Bowie was involved, now go back and listen to that song when you get to the chorus, and you'll hear David Bowie's voice in the chorus pretty predominantly.
Yeah.
But great stuff. Mott the Hoople, underrated, all-time rock band. But that is my power trio for the week. A lot of great
We did
picks.
it.
Again, join the Discord. The link is there in the chats on YouTube and Twitch. Let us know what your power trio is. We'll have another one coming up tomorrow. We're going to talk about the top 3 earworms. Could be a little more of a challenging topic, but we'll see what the crew comes up with tomorrow night on the Power Trio on the Hard Rock Empire. But for tonight, that is going to bring the podcast to a close. It was great to be back with you once again after a little bit of a break, but we will not take a long break this time. We'll be back less than 24 hours from now, live on YouTube and on Twitch with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, the music of May the 2nd coming up tomorrow night. A big thanks to Chris for dropping by as well, and his buddy Jordan as well for contributions. A big thanks to Shane, as always, for his contributions, and of course for Mike for putting all this together. Big thanks to Stoveleg Media for their continued support of the podcast, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are checking us out on the Hard Rock Empire. That's going to wrap things up. We'll be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.